Metal Gear Solid, a game that broke new ground by revolutionizing storytelling and gameplay mechanics in video games. Almost overnight, MGS changed the way people view video games. Metal Gear Solid was one of the first to show that games can do more than just be fun. They can appeal to many different emotions that humans experience and can even educate you on real-world issues. Not to say Metal Gear Solid was the first game to ever do this, but it was one of the first to do it, and one of the most iconic examples of it in gaming history. The game had endless replay value, fun mechanics and gameplay sections to play around with. The game broke the fourth wall sometimes and played tricks on the player. It had a mysterious and engaging story with characters that you felt a genuine connection to regardless of screen time. The soundtrack is still easily one of the most recognizable decades later, and it propelled Solid Snake into becoming one of the most famous video game characters of all time. The man himself still makes cameos in other games to this day. Nobody can deny how much of an impact Metal Gear Solid had and still has to this day. An entire genre of video games and many famous franchises would not exist without this game. And as I said in my other video, it's surprising how well the game holds up. It doesn't feel dated much at all. It's an old school game, but there's certainly a difference between old school and dated. And Metal Gear Solid is certainly the former. I, as well as many people, still consider Metal Gear Solid to be one of the greatest achievements the industry has ever seen. So, when it was announced that a sequel was being made, everyone lost their minds. Metal Gear Solid 2 was first revealed at E3 2000 with a 9-minute trailer. Yes, 9 minutes. Konami thought that dedicating 9 minutes to a single game was absurd, but the team pushed for it and it paid off. It was one of the most popular demos shown off that year. The demo showed familiar elements of the first game, such as returning characters like Solid Snake, whilst also showing some new additions to the stealth gameplay. The technology and graphics was so impressive, many people doubted the demo was running on actual PlayStation 2 hardware. However, in March 2001, Zone of the Enders released, a game in which Hideo Kojima was the producer. Because of this, a playable demo of Metal Gear Solid 2 was included with the game, to help boost sales and also to help promote Metal Gear Solid 2 itself. This demo pretty much confirmed that everything people saw from the demo in the previous year was on real hardware. The demo was very short, and some of the UI elements and sound effects were changed for the final game, but it was still an extremely well-polished demo that gave an idea of what to expect when the game released 8 months later. When it came to the game's release, Metal Gear Solid 2 sold extremely well. In fact, to this day, Metal Gear Solid 2 is the best-selling game in the franchise, selling over 7 million copies on the PlayStation 2 alone. However, Metal Gear Solid 2 wasn't met with the same love and appreciation as the first game. The game was extremely mixed when it released for multiple reasons. However, many years later, Metal Gear Solid 2 would gain respect as one of the best video games ever made. But why did people hate this game so much at first? And were their reasons valid? And also, what made them change their minds later down the line? These are questions I look forward to answering. And I have a lot of reference material from the game's development to work with to explain why Metal Gear Solid 2 is a divisive sequel. So right off the bat, the game begins with this awesome cutscene of a man in a raincoat walking across the George Washington Bridge on a cold and stormy night. A familiar voice says that information has been found regarding a new Metal Gear model being transported on a ship.
The Hudson River, 2 years ago. We had classified intelligence that a new type of Metal Gear was scheduled for transport. The whole thing stank, but our noses had been out in the cold too long.
As such, the man disappears from view and jumps down to the ship, where it was then revealed to be none other than the legendary Solid Snake.
This is Snake. Do you read me, Otacon?
Loud and clear, Snake.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Metal Gear Solid 2 picks up 2 years after Metal Gear Solid 1. Solid Snake and Otacon have formed an NGO anti-Metal Gear organization.
Don't you forget that you're part of Philanthropy now, an anti-Metal Gear organization and officially recognized by the UN.
Recognized, but still fringe, Otacon.
Unlike the previous 3 games, Snake is operating on his own accord this time around. Otacon is his informant and they do work together, but nobody's really in charge. Though Snake and Otacon's actions from the previous game has put a bounty on their heads, so whilst they are free from powers above them, they aren't free from consequence. Revolver Ocelot from the previous game makes a return with Sergei Galukovich, and his men take over the ship. Snake then has to perform some recon without being detected. I think this was the perfect way to start Metal Gear Solid 2. We see familiar faces, but we also see what the effects the last game led to and how the characters have adapted to it. I think setting the game in New York was also a great idea, since it makes the world the game takes place in feel more real. Alaska is a real place, yes, but Metal Gear Solid 1 is isolated from the outside world. Keeping Snake's full reveal until he lands on the tanker is so awesome. The second you see him, you know who it is, and then he takes off the coat and the game still stops you from seeing him, making you more excited for the final moment where he recreates the Terminator intro.
スネークらしき男が出てくると。もうコートをかぶって雨に打たれながら、男が歩いてくるんですけど、で、スネークがどうかを知りたい。ユーザーは知りたいんですけど、まだわからないですよね。で、飛び込んで、着地した時に初めて実体化して。スネークが煽りで映って、そこでタイトルが出るっていうことで、あそこまでは前作をプレイしたスネークが大好きな人たちの、感情を揺さぶるそういう導入部分です。
There is a short tutorial explaining the basic controls and how to save, and then it's on to the gameplay. First of all, it's worth noting how good this game looks for a 2001 PlayStation 2 game. I am running the PC version, but the game looked this good when it released. The jumping console generation really helped the technology. For example, Snake's modeled in MGS1 was 690 polygons. In MGS2, it's around 3,800 polygons, over 5.5 times more. Beyond that, there are effects such as the rain, which is a combination of particle effects on Snake's model and the screen, as well as a transparent floor to make the surface look wet. But the technology wasn't just used for graphics. The environments are so much more interactive in MGS2. Items will move and break when shot or punched, glass shatters in a realistic way, which then causes louder footprints, ice cubes melt, fire extinguishers throw lasers. If you hold up guards at gunpoint, they give dog tags, and if you shoot one of their limbs, it partially disables it. The list goes on and on. Point is that unlike a lot of games, Metal Gear Solid 2 didn't use the jumping technology just to improve character models and texture quality. It used the tech to make a more interactive and believable world. It reminds me of Max Payne, which came out the same year. Almost everything in the environment could be interacted with in some way, leading to the world feeling alive rather than just pretty window dressing as the player progresses through it. A lot of games today don't even have this level of detail. The gameplay itself has been updated since MGS1. A big addition is the ability to aim whilst in first person. In Metal Gear Solid 1, only a few weapons had this feature, whereas MGS2 has this function with any gun. This makes the player able to aim their gun wherever they please, and also allows for headshots. Headshots are extremely useful in this game since they take out targets in one hit. In MGS1, it would take 3 or 4 pistol shots to take down targets. Now you can still play the game that way, but the environments encourage a more slow and smooth approach to encounters. They're more claustrophobic than MGS1, which you think would be annoying, but it's not. Snake now has the ability to jump and hang off railings and ropes, which allows for more ways to get through rooms and around guards. Plus, if you drop down on a guard, then it instantly knocks them out. It does cause noise though, so you can't just go willy-nilly with it. Also, if you do pull-ups or ledge grabs, then it upgrades your grip meter. Snake can now shoot and peek around corners, and this works great as it means the player can quickly take out guards and see exactly what's around the corner without fully exposing themselves. Though if they do see Snake peeking out, they will investigate. Speaking of the guards, they are much more challenging in this game. Military advisor Morosada Mori wanted to make the guards in this game behave more like an actual military would. When you are detected, heavy troops with riot shields will come in to hunt you down, and even when you do manage to evade them, they will still search the area for a while afterwards before returning from whence they came. Now, I don't know if this game is 100% accurate to how a team would actually scout an area, but it's believable enough and adds challenge to the game as it takes longer to go from 100 back to 0, giving more incentive to not get caught. And there are also more obstacles to face whilst the guards hunt you down. Another thing that's great is that when you get spotted, the alarm doesn't immediately go off. The guard will retreat and call for backup. If you stop him before he's able to do so, then backup will not come. You can also throw chaff grenades to block communications. However, the guards do provide status reports every once in a while, and if command doesn't hear from them, then guards will be sent in to investigate. Motosata's influence on the game also extended to the way Snake holds a gun. In MGS1, Snake holds the gun next to his face, which looks cool but is very impractical and dangerous. In MGS2, he holds the gun low to the floor at all times unless he's aiming it, making Snake feel like a veteran who knows what he's doing.
もそうだったんですけど、今作も、軍事アドバイザーを一人つけましてですね、その非常にそういう兵隊の動きに、詳しい人物に実際モーションキャプチャーに立ち会ってもらいまして、でそういう時には銃はどう構えるんだで、我々結構映画から影響を受けてるんでね、銃を構えると、まさにジェームス・ボンドのようにこういう形で構えるんですけど、実際には銃は、銃口を上に向けたりはしないと、非常に危険なものなんで、銃は下に、下げた状態でこういう形で構えて、スタンディングを取る。
Items such as the thermal goggles and cardboard box also make a return and are very fun to use. In fact, the thermal goggles can help you find dog tags. Bodies also no longer disappear. Guards that you knock out or kill can be discovered by other guards, which will put them on alert. When on alert, guards are much more likely to notice you. If you play non-lethal, then guards you knock out can wake up, meaning you'll need to hide bodies. The best way to do so is to throw them into the water using these gates or put them in lockers, though these aren't always available. You could also use bodies as a way to lure guards into certain areas. You can also hide inside the lockers as well to avoid enemies, providing the player more options on how to evade guards. The level design as a whole is really great. There are plenty of ways to sneak around, but they all provide their own risks and rewards. For example, in this room, I could sneak across on this rope, but there's the risk that my grip meter will run out and I'll die. The drop also takes some health, and it makes some noise, so there's a chance the guard might spot me, and if he does, I'm all but certainly dead. But if I succeed, then I can get through the room without having to deal with many other guards inside it. I could also go down the stairs and go around, but there is the risk of getting spotted much easier than the rope method, since there's more guards and more sightlines for them to see you. But it allows you to be a bit more methodical to your approach. I could go for each room and talk about them, but what is great is that every room in MGS2 has at least 2 different ways to progress through it, maybe more. And the environments being more claustrophobic only adds to the challenge of the guards. MGS1's environments are bigger and more open, but MGS2's provides more interesting ways to get through them, so I'd say it's a step up overall. The new gameplay features added to Metal Gear Solid 2 are all welcome additions. Snake's movement makes traversing the environment and sneaking around guards more interesting and gives way more opportunities to take advantage of. Being able to aim in first person encourages the player to be slower and smoother with how they progress through the level. The guards pose a great challenge with how they react to what the player does. Bodies not disappearing means that the player will have to consider areas that the guards traverse and if it will affect their success or not. And the world is now so much more interactive and feels so much more alive, thanks to the small details put into the game. The first boss of the game is Olga Golukovich, the daughter of Sergei Golukovich. She's similar to the Ocelot boss from MGS1 in that it's a firearm duel. There isn't really that much to this fight. She hides behind cover, she shoots you, you shoot her, yada yada. She does try to make things harder for you by blinding you with a light or using a sheet for cover so you can't get a good shot. She works well overall as the first boss. It teaches the player what to expect from bosses moving forward, such as how to move around and how to avoid attacks, how to adapt to their tactics and how to fight them. The simplicity works. Ocelot's boss in MGS1 worked the same way. Another thing is that the cutscene here is great. Olga isn't a rookie, she's an experienced soldier, which is why she's able to put up a fight against Snake. Snake also shows that he's aware of tricks someone would use to hide weapons, and thus it shows his intelligence. It's good character building overall.
Toss your gun overboard, slowly. A woman. Not there. Toss it overboard. Hold that position. Now, turn around.
You know what you're doing.
Another thing MGS2 has added is more non-lethal options. You start the game with a non-lethal pistol, for example. Kojima-san said that he didn't want to make games with senseless violence, and thus the idea of providing more non-lethal options came up. You can still play lethally in MGS2, but you're making the choice to do so. It's often easier to go lethal than non-lethal, but you are marked down for doing so and you get less rewards on playthroughs. The fight with Olga also shows that you can defeat enemies without using lethal force, and it is a viable option. After defeating Olga, Snake obtains the USP pistol, which is a lethal weapon. It makes sense the game doesn't give you a lethal weapon until you defeat Olga, not only because she's important to the narrative later on, but also because she's a pregnant woman, and I don't think Snake would try and kill a pregnant woman. Though a Cypher does manage to spot Snake, compromising his presence. The USP pistol does fire faster than the M9, but it is lethal and is harder to aim in first person. It also has a light that gives away your position. Snake moves down into the ship holds and fights some guards. I assumed this section was added to see if the player's moral compass would break under pressure of fighting multiple enemies at once, since the USP pistol makes this section so much easier. Otacon says that someone could be monitoring their transmission, so he decides that a safer way to upload the information regarding the new Metal Gear is to use a terminal inside the ship. He also says that this tip about the new Metal Gear was an anonymous one.
Snake, there's something I have to tell you.
What?
We didn't dig up this info about the new Metal Gear on our own. Not like usual.
How did you find out then?
It was a tip. An anonymous tip.
Anonymous? You've never trusted those. Why would you start now?
I have a younger sister, a stepsister. We have different parents. I only knew her for 2 years.
You've never mentioned her before. So?
The sender of the tip was EE.
EE?
Her name is Emma, but I always call her EE.
Emma? Emmerich?
Yeah, it just caught my eye, you know?
Even this location has multiple ways to progress. You could use the ropes to get around the area, you could sneak around the guards, you can go underneath the guards, or use the catwalks above them. There's even alternate cutscenes for Snake seeing Metal Gear Ray for the first time, depending on which entrance you use. Snake then takes pictures of Ray and uploads them. Before he can leave though, Ocelot comes in.
Excellent speech, my friend.
Who the?
Gift of the silver tongue. They say it's the mark of a good officer. And of a liar. Americans are too in love with the sound of their own voice to speak the truth.
Ocelot explains that he's taken Metal Gear Ray, and if anyone tries to stop him, he'll blow the ship.
Metal Gear only has room for one! Lukovich, you and your daughter will die here. Damn you!
After detonating the explosives, Snake encounters Ocelot, where it's suddenly revealed that Ocelot grafted Liquid's arm onto his body, which means he's possessed by Liquid Snake and is now voiced by Cam Clarke.
It's been a while, brother.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Liquid?
Not so young anymore, eh, Snake? You're drowning in time. I know what it's like, brother.
It's strange, but Metal Gear has had supernatural elements in the past, so it's not unusual. The ship then sinks, and Ocelot escapes in Ray, and Snake dies? It was revealed at the end of MGS1 that Ocelot was working for the president, and so in this game we'll finally get to see what that leads to.
Yes, I have photographic evidence of Snake on the scene. The cipher was most useful. I look forward to tomorrow morning's newsflash. I would say the Marine Corps' plans are on indefinite hold. Yes, of course, Mr. President.
Overall, it's a solid first chapter of the game. The new gameplay elements work amazingly well with the level design. We get to see our favourite characters return and what's happened to them since we've left off. The premise starts off simple with Snake infiltrating a ship to find a new Metal Gear, but it gets more mysterious and more unsettling the longer it goes on, and it does a great job showing off the advancements in technology since the first game. It's no doubt that Metal Gear Solid 2 has an amazing opening chapter. It's the rest of the game where the perspective of many becomes mixed.
After that explosive start, the game jumps forward 2 years. Snake is now tasked with infiltrating the Big Shell waste facility just off the Hudson River.
Snake, do you remember the sinking of that tanker 2 years ago?
Of course.
Terrorists blow a hole in an oil tanker full of crude barely 20 miles off the shore of Manhattan. Your classic nightmare. It didn't take long for the government to put an oil fence around the whole mess. And then that massive offshore cleanup facility went up inside.
The Big Shell. I hear the cleanup isn't quite over yet.
Approximately 6 hours ago, the Big Shell was seized by an armed group.
Do we have an ID?
Former members of the Navy SEALs Special Anti-Terrorist Training Squad Dead Cell. Russian private army members may also be involved. It's a highly trained group and they have the Big Shell under complete control.
What are their demands?
$30 billion.
$30 billion? What makes them think they can get that much?
There was a government-sponsored tour going on at the Big Shell that day.
Hostages, huh?
A VIP from one of the major conservation groups, and one from our own government. The most important person in a sense.
The most important person?
James Johnson.
The president?
Unless the demands are met, the terrorists intend to blow the Big Shell out of the water.
And the crude will ignite, turning the Manhattan Harbor into an inferno.
That's not the worst-case scenario. If the chlorides being used to decontaminate the seawater go up with the oil, toxins containing catastrophic levels of dioxins will be released. In other words, the bay's ecosystem will be wiped out, and the sea will turn into a toxic soup for centuries, becoming the worst environmental disaster in history.
Snake comes across a fence underwater, but it's already been cut, meaning somebody's already been through here. Snake makes it to a ladder and gets out of the water. Campbell then decides to change Snake's codename to Raiden. He doesn't exactly know why though. As you probably guessed, this isn't Solid Snake. Different voice actor, different name, and so on and so forth. Raiden progresses further into the facility and sees someone who looks familiar take out some guards. Raiden then heads to a terminal and the game asks you to insert your name, date of birth, nationality, blood type, etc. Anyway, Campbell gives you a small tutorial and the game then introduces Rosemary.
Jack, is everything all right?
What are you doing here?
Jack, can you hear me?
Rose, you're not supposed to be involved. What's going on?
Jack, I'm a part of this mission.
Colonel, what the hell is going on?
Raiden, meet the mission analyst. She'll be overseeing the data saving and support.
Why her?
The Foxhound analyst that was supposed to take part in this mission was in an accident. Rosemary was brought in as a replacement.
An accident?
And according to the files, she knows you better than anybody else.
Rose may be in the service, but an intelligence analyst is no field officer.
Not to worry. She has our technical staff at her disposal.
Rose is who you call to save your game. She keeps using Raiden's real name, Jack, even when told not to because I guess she's a bit of a silly woman. But honestly, I'm gonna keep calling him Jack, cause fuck him. Rose is the love interest of this game, and let's just say the way it's handled is meh. Anyway, Jack makes his way up to the lift to fully reveal his character model. Which brings us to one of the most controversial protagonists of all time. When Metal Gear Solid 2 was advertised, the game only showed Solid Snake, the protagonist of the 3 previous games. All of the advertising showed Solid Snake being the cool guy he usually is, infiltrating facilities, taking out guards, the usual. However, it didn't show that you would be playing as a completely new character, Jack, who is the complete opposite of Snake. Snake is stoic and masculine, Jack is whiny and effeminate. He also wears eyeliner.
性を描こうという気はないですから、おそらくトータルとしてそういう風に見えるんじゃないかなと思います。ただセクシーな部分は欲しいんで、それはライデンであろうとスネークであろうとセクシーに見える方がベストだと思います。
What the advertising also didn't tell you was that you would be playing this character for 80% of the game. After you finish the tanker chapter, you play as Jack for the rest of the game. You never go back to playing as the character everyone wanted to play as when playing this game. This understandably upset a lot of the fans as they wanted to continue playing the game as the protagonist they fell in love with from the previous games, not this guy. There is also the fact that Metal Gear Solid 2 straight up used false advertising. Let's go back to the year 2000. A 9-minute trailer for MGS2 was shown, and the trailer showed clips from the tanker chapter of the game. The issue comes with the fact that more advertising and trailers for the game needed to be made. And we can't just show the tanker chapter again because we've already shown that. And we can't show Jack because that will ruin the surprise. But we have no other footage to show then. So what did they do? Show parts of the plant section of the game and replace Jack's model with Snake. Which means the trailer shows parts of the game that straight up don't exist. This shows Snake partaking in bosses and levels that either he is never in or just never ended up in the game. Now I can see both sides to this. On the one hand, I can understand that the developers really wanted to keep Jack a secret surprise for players, and that they really had no other option when it came to marketing the game. On the other hand, it is literal false advertising, and I don't really blame fans for being annoyed at the protagonist change. Over the years, fans have come to appreciate Jack as a character, but part of that is because nowadays it's hard to not know that you're going to be playing as Jack in MGS2. For the re-release of the game Subsistence, he's on the front box, and when MGS2 released, he was the most talked about aspect. Thus, paradoxically, everyone knows the surprise in MGS2. In fact, you the viewer probably already knew that Jack, despite the fact that I haven't even mentioned him at all before this section of the video. That's how well known he is now. Hideo Kojima said Jack was added to provide a more objective view of Solid Snake, as it's harder to add more depth to a character when you're playing as them.
あとはやっぱりスネークっていうキャラクターをもう少し、深みを持たせたかったというのがありまして、どうしてもプレイヤーにしてしまうと自分なんですよね。スネークイコール自分っていうことになってくるとあまりキャラクターを描けない、そのプレイヤーに、従ってしまいますから、新しいキャラクターをプレイヤーにすることで、すごく、スネークを客観的に見ることができると。でスネークが、それによって非常にかっこよくも見えるし、偉大にも見えるし、ということですよ。でその結果前作よりも非常にスネークをかっこよく思ったと思うんですよ。でその辺の仕掛けの効果だと思います。
So let's see if the protagonist switch paid off beyond just being a surprise.
Hey, what are you doing here? Oh, we're gonna switch narrators now? Really? Trying to be meta? In your dreams, get out. Raiden mostly plays the same as Snake, but he has a few differences. Snake's melee is a 3-hit combo, Raiden's is a 4-hit combo. Snake rolls, Raiden cartwheels. There may be other details that are different, but I can't really think of any. Raiden continues through the big shell until he ends up in Strut B, where SEAL Team 10 are effortlessly killed by a man named Vamp, who has a knife placed on his crotch. Very mature, guys. Also, how original of a name, guys. Oh, he's a vampire. Let's name him Vamp. This woman is fragile. We'll name her Fragile. Also, Vamp is voiced by Hermes from Futurama, which I find hilarious.
5 today. Or rather, 6.
Anyway, Vamp then goes for Raiden until a SEAL team member comes in and saves Raiden, only for Raiden to then save him again. The man identifies himself as Iroquois Pliskin.
My name is Pliskin. Iroquois Pliskin, Lieutenant Junior Grade.
I don't know if the developers were actually trying to make it obvious or not as to who this guy is. Yeah, it's probably just a coincidence that he looks exactly like Solid Snake and is also voiced by David Hayter. Maybe Pliskin is also a vampire, seeing as he doesn't even have his own shadow. The name Iroquois Pliskin is a direct reference to Escape from New York, as the main character is named Snake Plissken. The company who owns Escape from New York was actually going to sue Konami and Kojima a while back, but the director and writer of the film, John Carpenter, told them not to, as, I've met the creator of those games and he's a nice guy. Or at least he's nice to me. Pliskin immediately notices the suit Raiden's wearing and asks who he is. This is Raiden's first actual mission. He's only ever had VR training.
I was part of the Army's Force 21 trials.
Force 21? That's about tactical IT deployment, right? Any field experience?
No, not really.
So this is your first.
I've had extensive training, the kind that's indistinguishable from the real thing.
Like what?
Sneaking mission 60, weapons 80, advanced...
VR, huh?
But realistic in every way.
A virtual grunt of the digital age, that's just great.
That's far more effective than live exercises.
You don't get injured in VR, do you? Every year a few soldiers die in field exercises.
There's pain sensation in VR and even a sense of reality and urgency. The only difference is it isn't actually happening.
That's the way they want you to think, to remove you from the fear that goes with battle situations. War is a video game. What better way to raise the ultimate soldier?
Now, to be fair, this does actually have some weight. The US military did often use video games as a way to train soldiers, and still do in some ways. Games like Doom had military WODs that Marines would play, to train reaction time, spatial awareness, and all sorts. Obviously, playing Doom doesn't do the training that actual field exercises will, but considering that VR is a thing growing rapidly nowadays, how long before the VR that we see in Metal Gear becomes a reality? Even for a 2001 game, the idea wasn't far-fetched. There's also more to it than just social commentary. The main purpose this conversation serves is to set up plot points for later in the game. Anyway, Pliskin then gives some backstory on Vamp and Dead Cell. Dead Cell is this game's version of Foxhound, basically. They'll be the bosses you face throughout the game. Pliskin talks about how Solid Snake died on the tanker, yet the leader of Dead Cell claims to be Solid Snake, which means that either he's impersonating him or Solid Snake isn't actually dead.
What about their leader? He says he's Solid Snake.
Snake died 2 years ago.
You mean the incident that made this big shell necessary in the first place?
Right, and he was the one that sank that tanker.
But he's a legend.
Legends are usually bad news. There's not a lot of difference between heroes and madmen.
You're saying Snake is still alive and pulled another one?
No, he's not involved in this one. His body was positively ID'd 2 years ago.
Snake is dead.
And buried.
Raiden and Pliskin then go their separate ways. I also like this detail of Pliskin giving cigarettes to Raiden. Snake loves cigarettes and always brings them along with him, even when he's explicitly told not to.
By the way, sorry to disappoint you, but I did manage to smuggle out my smokes.
How did you do that?
In my stomach. Thanks to the shot you gave me that suppressed my stomach acids.
Cigarettes? How are those going to help you?
You never know.
It shows that he trusts Raiden and has gained a respect for him after this small conversation. It also parallels how control is being lifted from Snake to Raiden. On harder difficulties, you can also give a shaver to Pliskin, and Snake will have a baby face later on in the game, which fits his MGS1 look more. I think as an introductory sequence to Raiden's section, this works well. You aren't given all the details at first, you get a chance to get accustomed to Raiden's gameplay. One of the major threats is shown first before then given any explanation, and we get to meet a mutual friend who we don't know much about and is oddly suspicious, and it sets up plot points by poking fun at the player before then taking it a bit more seriously. It works well to get the player invested very quickly, and since there is a lot going on, it's not really overbearing. At least not yet, anyway. Metal Gear Solid 1 worked the same way. There is a lot going on in that game, but not everything happens at once, giving enough time to let the player breathe and take in the information. And trust me, with this game, you'll need it. One thing I will talk about quickly is the fact that just like the first game, there is a lot of cutscenes and sequences of cutscenes. There are some points where you can literally go 15 minutes without any input from the player. The thing is, I'm mixed on this criticism. On the one hand, yeah, it is kind of silly that most of the runtime of a video game is cutscenes and things that don't require input. But on the other hand, the cutscenes in this game are so entertaining to watch, and them being lengthy allows the narrative to be fleshed out more. Plus, every cutscene and codec conversation can be skipped easily, so if you want to replay the game again just purely for the gameplay, then you easily can. But I could still understand some people yelling at the screen saying, "Let me play!" At this point, lengthy cutscenes were part of Metal Gear's style of storytelling, so I won't list it as a criticism here, but it's just something I wanted to make notes about before moving forward. I think the game is overall made better by lengthy cutscenes, but nothing is without drawbacks. Rose then asks Raiden if he remembers what day tomorrow is.
Jack, do you remember what day tomorrow is?
That again. I'm sorry, but I still don't have a clue.
That's okay.
What is it, Rose? Talk to me.
I'd rather you figure it out. It's important.
How important?
Important enough, and we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Why not now?
Tomorrow seems more appropriate.
Apparently this was inspired by a conversation Kojima-san had with his wife.
あと4月30日っていうくだりなんですけど、あれはですね、初めてデートをした日にちなんですけども、今の奥さんにも同じこと言われて忘れてた頃があったんで、あれはどちらかというと僕の体験になりますかね。その日に、結婚前だったんですけども、今の奥さんとですね、最初に会った日に、デートの約束をしてまして。僕はすっかり忘れてて、すっぽかしたということがあって、それで非常に危ない時期がありましたけども、そういうエピソードの、まあ、裏返しというか、そんな。
The thing is that if you save often, then you'll be hearing the same question so many times, and it gets annoying. Jack, do you know what day tomorrow is? Yes, woman, I know what day it is tomorrow. It's the day I become clinically insane from you asking me the same question so many times that I lose all grasp on reality. I also learned that the levels in MGS 1 and 2 were designed using Lego pieces, and during the MGS 2 documentary, Kojima-san just has Lego in front of him. I love it when developers tap into their childlike nature when making games. It just makes it feel like a genuine passion project. And I love it. The meaning of the date is supposed to be a surprise for the end of the game, though if you're an American, you'll probably already know what the day is. Anyway, Raiden progresses forward until he finds Lady Luck, aka Fortune.
Ready grenades!
A dud!
Today is another bad day. Is there anyone here that can give me happiness?
I like the setup of the Dead Cell members, showing them to be forces to be reckoned with. If 10 guys couldn't take this woman, then what chance do I have? Raiden then meets up with Peter Stillman, a bomb disposal expert, and he's here because of Fat Man. Yes, that's his name. Big Chungus. He has set up bombs all over the Big Shell, and thus they need to be taken care of. The man himself isn't in good shape physically, but his knowledge of bombs and Fat Man is helpful enough. Pliskin will take care of the bombs in Shell 2, Raiden will take care of the bombs in Shell 1. After Pliskin leaves, Peter expresses his suspicions of Pliskin.
Good luck, kid. I'll see you later. Semper Fi.
That man's no SEAL. I don't even think he's a Navy man.
What?
Semper Fi. Marine Corps talk.
The tutorials in this game do a good job of telling you how mechanics work, however, I do think that some of them can go on a bit long, and some of them explain mechanics that you would probably already know, such as how to peek around corners. We already learned how to do that from the Snake chapter. Plus, the overbearingness can be a bit annoying. We're nearly an hour into the Plant chapter, and there's barely been any gameplay thus far. So, as of right now, this is where Raiden's gameplay actually begins. There are a few small gameplay sections before this, but I wouldn't exactly say that's where the gameplay of MGS2 starts. And how is Raiden's gameplay? Well, all the positives I listed from the tanker section still hold true in Big Shell. The updated guard, AI, and alert system provides for a good challenge and an adrenaline rush whenever you get detected. Another aspect I like is how multiple levels factors into the different struts. MGS1 had different levels, but it rarely ever factored into the level other than just how you progressed through it, and even then it was mainly just going up and down stairs. In MGS2 you can climb over ledges and move across them, which gives more options to sneaking around and progressing through the level. Enemies can also see levels above or below them and spot you accordingly. Now, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I don't believe this was the case in MGS1, and if it was, it wasn't utilized much, whereas in MGS2 you're much more exposed. Strut A has the roof, which really has guards on it, and a lower section where guards patrol. This isn't a difficult strut, but that's fine since it's the first one you go through and thus the player has to get adjusted to it. Strut B isn't anything interesting, it's mainly just there for the cutscene and not much else. Same with Strut C. Strut D is where things get interesting. Both you and the enemy are on a strict path, and you can take enemies out easily and also be spotted easily. And if guards get called in, then it's really hard to evade them because of the lack of sneaking spots. You could hang off the railing, but only for a limited time. You could also drop to a lower level to make your life easier, but that only works if you get spotted on the top and need to move to the bottom. There is also spots to hide bodies so that further investigations aren't called in and guards don't wake up and start patrolling again. I like this strut quite a lot. It can be challenging to get through and the player has a bunch of options when progressing, but less if they get spotted. It really incentivizes the player to stay hidden. Strut E is another great one. There are plenty of spaces to hide, but that also makes it harder to spot enemies and take them out, especially if you don't have the radar right away. There are plenty of paths to get through, and if you get spotted then it's practically a death sentence in this room, since it's harder to get out. Strut F is the warehouse, which has 2 levels. This is a good place to go in order to resupply on ammunition, and the further you get into the game, the more doors open, which leads to new gear. So it works well overall. In between each strut is a connecting bridge, and oftentimes there will be 2 levels to choose from. Though you won't just be facing guards, ciphers will be searching for you as well, and unlike guards, if they spot you then it's an instant alert. Chaff grenades disrupt them temporarily, but you can also shoot them. However, you won't have a suppressor for most of the game, and the M9 can't destroy them, so in order to take them out with a gun, you have to be careful when doing so. Cameras work the same way, but are also stationary. Overall, Shell 1 is pretty good in terms of level design and giving the players options on how to progress through the level whilst making it challenging. Speaking of which, there are plenty of extra difficulty modes, and if you find the game too easy, then you can have the option to instantly fail when you are detected. With this option, even the easiest struts can have tension as any wrong moves, and it's game over. My only issue is I wish there were more struts like Strut D, Strut E, and Strut F. since they're the ones where you take advantage of the mechanics the most. B and C are pretty much just corridors for cutscenes, and that's it. There's no real incentive to do something creative, and you can't really do anything creative in them. So the level design of Shell 1 is half good, half mediocre. It works well overall for challenging the player and also allowing them to experiment, but I wish there were more creative struts that encourage the player to take advantage of the mechanics more. One design decision I am mixed about is making the map one big loop. On the one hand, it works better for pacing and level design. The player can quickly get familiar with the struts and how to progress through them and how guard patterns work and how they change as the game progresses. However, it makes for less surprises. In MGS1, you never see the entire facility of Shadow Moses, which means you don't know how big or small it is, and thus the game can have crazy events in it. There is also the factor of progression. In MGS1, you're always progressing further and further into Shadow Moses. Now yes, there is backtracking, but it's all in the name of getting further. Whereas in MGS2, you don't really go to any new locations until a third into Raiden's chapter. You'll mostly be going through the same rooms again and again. Now this personally doesn't bother me since I enjoy the freedom of Shell 1, and I like the non-linear design at the start of the game where you can take out the bombs in any order you like. But since you're going in a loop, it means you won't be seeing as many unique locations as MGS1. So Shell 1 is overall pretty good, but has some drawbacks. Thankfully the good outweighs the bad, but I wish there was more complex strut designs to make the player think more tactically when progressing. The bombs themselves are mostly easy to find, they're not really the appeal of the level design, they're just the objective in each strut. It's the end point to your start point. What happens in between is the interesting part. Objectives in games don't always have to be super interesting, so long as the objective is in service to the mechanics of the game, and the mechanics are engaging enough to keep the game afloat. And MGS2 more than fits the bill in that regard. The interesting part to me is how the bombs ended up in the game. Everyone working on MGS2 was given a notebook and was told to think of one new idea every day for something to put into the game. The bomb disposal was one of those ideas, as was being able to peek around corners.
特に企画の当初、先ほど話したように、上から下へ、情報が降りるだけじゃないんで、それぞれからまずアイデアを吸収したいということで、そういうノート、アイデアノートっていうのを作りまして、1日に最低でも1個以上、これは結構大変なんですけど、何か考えてこう書くんですよね。で、そういうたくさん溜まったアイデアの中から、監督の方が全部帳面を見てですね、これは非常に素晴らしいとか、これはもう一つかなで、そういう形でとりあえずふるいをかけて OK になったものをちょっと作り始めてみるんですけど、そこからもですね、またそれで OK にならずに、作っていく過程で面白くなかったらそれでまたどんどん落とされていきますし、でもうちょっと面白いアイデアなかったかとまた帳面を紐解いてみたりとかですね、そういう行ったり来たりで、非常にああいうアイデアノートっていうのは開発の初期に、役に立つ、作り方だったと思います。
I think having this level of feedback is good for a developer, always being open to new ideas. You also have plenty of opportunities during this part of the game to talk to other characters and get some interesting conversations. We also get this cutscene which hints at a familiar face making a return.
I've taken care of that annoying fly. What's the situation over there?
Puzzling. I saw a man dressed like a ninja just now.
Ninja?
It's the only way to describe it. A kind of cyborg ninja, complete with a sword.
This is also hinted by someone named Deep Throat, warning you about mines. The more you defuse bombs, Peter talks about how the bomb placements aren't really effective for taking out the big shell. He then reveals that his legs that you saw him having issues with earlier are actually fine, and he faked being a victim because he caused a church to blow up, killing many people, and he didn't want people to believe he got off scot-free. He then heads off to disarm one of the bombs in Shell 2. Peter then reveals that Fat Man planted a bomb in the lower part of Stress A and that you can't detect it using the normal sensor, so he gives you a new one, and then dies.
Looks like he's far surpassed me as far as explosives technique goes. As for the rest...
Pete, get the hell out of there.
There's less than 30 seconds left. It's too late.
No!
Pliskin, get away from Strut H as fast as you can.
Pete!
Raiden! Keep your distance. Use the spray from as far away as possible.
Me?
You can do it. I know that.
I'm not so sure.
But I am. Do it. I know you can.
I never really cared all that much for Peter's character in this game. His backstory feels thrown in at the last minute to try and get the player to feel any emotion as he dies, but it comes out of the blue and isn't very interesting. He wants to stop Fat Man since he trained him and created a monster in a way, but it doesn't get that much deeper than that, and his death is quickly washed over, so you don't really get much time to ponder on it. Raiden disrupts the bomb and then Fortune appears, which leads to Raiden's first boss fight. If you can call it a boss. You don't actually fight Fortune. The game tries to encourage you to fight her by giving her a health bar that is smaller than my self-esteem, but you can't attack her. As shown before, bullets just go around her, so the only thing you can do in this cutscene is just run around and dodge attacks until a cutscene plays. This works for the first time playthrough, really emphasizing the fact that Raiden does not stand a chance against Fortune, but on repeat playthroughs there isn't much to this, you just run around for like 2 minutes. I don't even think this type of design was needed. We've fought characters who can deflect bullets and negate the use of firearms before, and they were cool boss fights. Why can't this one be cool? Anyway, Vamp then comes down and dies.
Then he's all mine.
Later, Vamp.
Now!
Well, okay then. Anyway, Raiden is then instructed to head to the helipad where Fat Man is. Fat Man is a fat guy with roller skates, who has some really stupid dialogue that I find funny.
You're right on time, I see. I like a punctual man. Is he Dead Cell? I am Fat Man. I am the greatest that humanity has to offer, and can you hear it? Hear this rhythm? It's the rhythm of time and life. Don't you love this sound? I used to hang around department store clock counters. Life is short.
He also shows that he has no real interest in what the rest of Dead Cell want, and was in this for personal reasons.
Ransom? What are you talking about?
$30 billion in cash.
So that's what's going on, huh?
What the hell are you talking about?
Oh, you'll know soon enough. And I could care less what they plan to do. My ambitions are much more simple. To be the most famous bomber of them all.
You're nuts! No one's gonna give a damn about you!
Oh yes, they will. I'll go down in history as the man who beat Peter Stillman. That's the only reason I assisted them.
I'll talk more about Dead Cell's story involvement later. For now, it's time to fight Fat Man, and he's a really good boss fight. You have to attack him whilst defusing bombs. He has an attack stage and a dormant stage. You also have to be more accurate with your weapon, since you need to headshot him to actually damage him. Though shooting him anywhere else will stun him. As you can tell by this gameplay footage, I'm terrible at aiming. The timer for bombs gets shorter and shorter, and you'll need to move around the arena more quickly. It's challenging and unique from anything else in the game and the series thus far. Very solid boss fight. Afterwards, Fat Man then reveals that there is a final bomb hidden in the area, and it turns out he was sitting on it. Good one.
Laugh and grow fat.
Anyway, Raiden then walks out until a cyborg ninja comes in. If you have a keen eye, then you can see the identity of the ninja early. Anyway, the ninja then tells Raiden that if he wants to find the location of the president, then he needs to find a man named Ames in the core of Shell 1. To do so, Raiden will need a disguise to get in. This is a unique section of the game that breaks up the usual pace of sneaking around guards. You're in plain view and you have to make sure not to bump into guards or do anything suspicious. They'll even notice if you have the wrong gun equipped. The ninja also says that Ames has a pacemaker, and thus his heartbeat will sound different from anyone else's. So you also need a directional microphone. This isn't hard, since you pretty much just need to look for the guy with the highest polygon count and a unique character model, but I do like that this section of the game decided to give a unique twist on the usual Metal Gear formula. Raiden then talks to Ames, who says that the nuke the enemies have can only be activated of the President's own free will, and that the Big Shell isn't actually an oil facility, but was created to secretly house a new Metal Gear.
The case.
You mean the nuclear button they took?
Right, and the case won't do a thing by itself. That case may be the single most advanced example of a weapons failsafe system. The password is nothing less than the physiological data of the US President.
Physiological data?
The President's own vital signs, heartbeat, brainwave pattern, blood pressure and so on are constantly monitored and relayed by his internal nanomachines. This information, along with the DNA pattern, serve as a biometric password, unbreakable even by the latest parallel processor supercomputers. The password entry itself cannot be performed unless brainwave patterns and heartbeats fall within normal parameters, rendering chemical and other forms of coercion impractical. In other words, the login must be made of the President's own free will. As a failsafe, the input must also be reconfirmed hourly, even after the initial login. If a valid confirmation is not forthcoming, the system will automatically cancel the login.
Is there really a new model of Metal Gear here?
Absolutely. The black case serves as the launch key to Metal Gear as well.
Why would they hide Metal Gear in an offshore plant?
Haven't they told you anything? The entire thing was planned. The oil spill, the tanker accident that caused it, everything. The Big Shell was built specifically for the development of a new Metal Gear model. The inspection tour was to check its progress.
What's going on around here?
The game then decides to throw you into an interactive cutscene where you have to aim the microphone in the right direction to hear the conversation. I appreciate the effort, but it's annoying since you can barely see the characters through the glass, and thus getting the position correct is a nightmare, and you may miss dialogue. This was a poor decision. I would rather it just be a cutscene. Anyway, it's revealed that the President has already input the password, and it's clear that Raiden was told conflicting information by the Colonel. And since we know he isn't above lying, this makes Raiden suspicious. Ocelot confronts Ames, but he then dies of a heart attack. Deja vu. Raiden's cover is then blown, but the ninja from before comes in to save him, and Raiden makes an escape. Raiden then makes it to the Shell 1 and 2 connecting bridge and takes out a bunch of Semtex explosives. Some of them are actually really well hidden, so I'll give the game a lot of credit for that. Raiden then meets Otacon from MGS-1, which makes Pliskin seem more suspicious. Raiden then confronts the Colonel about it, but Campbell keeps denying that Pliskin could be Solid Snake and doesn't seem to view Snake very highly, despite the fact that they were friends in the previous game. There are a lot of questions and mystery, and it's obvious Raiden isn't being told specific details, which adds conflict between him and other characters, and makes the plot seem more interesting as nothing seems to be legitimate. The boss of Dead Cell then makes his entrance.
So you're the boss around here?
No, not just around here. I'm the boss to surpass Big Boss himself. Solid Snake. No, that is not Solid Snake. What a pleasant surprise, brother.
Save it. You brother of mine.
Don't say you've forgotten me, Snake.
Snake?
Right, take cover. Stop impersonating him. Brother, I'm a whole different game from Liquid.
Solidus then jumps into the Harrier, and it's time for another boss fight. This fight is an improved version of the Hind D fight from MGS-1. Solidus has a good variety of moves the player has to tackle in different ways, and the bridge gets more and more destroyed as the fight goes on. He also does a lot of damage, and the fight can be challenging, especially if you don't have much resources, though Pliskin will sometimes throw items for you. Overall, it's a fun boss fight and improved upon the formula of a boss from the first game by giving it more variety and making it more fast-paced. Raiden then gets Solidus' left eye and is forced to retreat using Metal Gear Ray. Afterwards, Pliskin reveals that he is in fact Solid Snake. Moving on to Shell 2, it's a step down from Shell 1. Compared to Shell 1, your progression is much more linear, which isn't bad in of itself, but there are much less opportunities to take advantage of the game's mechanics. Also, because of the bombs earlier in the game, 2 of the struts in Shell 2 are inaccessible, meaning you have less levels. There's another directional mic section, only this time you can't see the target, so you're pretty much guaranteed to miss dialogue or mess it up. An electric floor is set up to stop anyone from getting the president, but Raiden makes short work of it by getting a directional missile.
Are you alright, sir?
Is this some kind of sick joke? I thought you came to kill me.
What?
I'm prepared to face the consequences of my betrayal.
What are you...
The president then explains who the Patriots are.
The real power is in the Patriots' hands.
The Patriots?
The truth behind this country. I'm not surprised you've never heard of them. Very few are aware of their existence, even among those with code word clearance.
Huh?
Politics, the military, the economy, they control it all. They even choose who becomes president. Putting it simply, the Patriots rule this country.
No.
Hard to believe, isn't it? But it's the truth. The space defense, income tax reduction, and national missile defense programs. Every policy that's been credited to me was actually done according to their instructions.
Space defense was initiated by Congress.
That's what the Patriots want the country to believe. It's all a show. Democracy is just a filler for textbooks. Think about it. Do you actually believe that public opinion influences the government?
No.
This country is shaped and controlled as the Patriots see fit. The people are shown what they want to believe. What you call government is actually a well-staged production aimed at satisfying the public.
Huh?
Don't look at me like that. I'm legally sane, you know.
It's not your sanity that worries me.
No one knows who the Patriots really are. Even my instructions come from a cutout. All I've been told is that every key decision is made by a group of 12 men, known as the Wise Men's Committee.
Your office? The White House?
Merely puppets, pawns in a game. By pledging my loyalty, an insignificant son of a senator was awarded the presidency. Of course, that wasn't the only price I had to pay.
What do you mean?
Even if a pawn becomes a queen, it is still just a playing piece. I wanted to leave my own mark in history, but my ambitions were... You'll understand someday. Whether you believe it or not, the balance of power rests in the hands of the Patriots. They regulate the country's various interests through controlled presentation, staging a drama that is palatable to the general masses. Can you imagine what would happen if they ceased to function? Picture a massive political vacuum, a space that every powermonger will try to fill for their own greedy ends. I'm talking about an unregulated power struggle, panic, civil war, chaos. Like it or not, the Patriots is an organization that must continue to exist.
So you changed your mind because you wanted to avoid global chaos.
Exactly. When I told Solidus that I wished to prevent disaster, he replied that pawns can never become players. Arsenal Gear. That's the code name for the new Metal Gear.
Arsenal?
That's right. Arsenal. We're talking about an impregnable fortress carrying a load of over a couple of thousand missiles, including nuclear warheads, all protected by a horde of mass-produced Metal Gear Ray units. Arsenal gear is more than just a military tool. It is a means to preserve the world as it is. It will establish a new form of control. The Patriots will use it to keep their place as the country's true rulers. Right now, they feel pressured and threatened.
By what?
They fear an overabundance of digital information. The world will drown in the coming flood of information, and they along with it. The Arsenal plans include a system to digitally manage the flow of information, making it possible to shape the truth for their own purposes. In short, the Arsenal system is the key to their supremacy.
The key?
Yes. The GW system is the Patriots' trump card. Arsenal gear will be fully operational when GW is successfully integrated. Once operational, it will be a completely new form of power for the Patriots to wield.
Basically, the Patriots don't like that the internet is the digital equivalent of the Wild West, where anyone can say or do anything and get away with it, since it means they will lose control. Big Shell was also created to house Metal Gear Arsenal, which contains the GW AI the Patriots are going to use to censor information. Solidus is also the entire reason the Shadow Moses incident in the first game happened, which led to conflict between him and the Patriots. The President tried blackmailing his way into the Wiseman Council, but it didn't work. The Patriots also didn't like the fact that Solid Snake became a legend, and they framed him for the tanker incident because of it. The President then orders Raiden to kill him, but Ocelot does it instead. It's also revealed that Otacon's sister is inside Big Shell, and she can stop Arsenal and GW from going active. So the next part of the game revolves around finding Emma and getting her to the security room, which is, without a doubt, the weakest part of the game. Firstly, the game has underwater sections where you have to swim about, and I'm never a fan of underwater sections in games that have nothing to do with water. The controls are okay for the most part, but I genuinely wonder if anyone designing this sequence thought it was fun. Raiden then meets Vamp, once again, a really good boss. Vamp has a variety of moves the player needs to avoid or counter. There are cool things you can do to make beating Vamp easier, such as throwing explosives in the pool, and he also does this mind trick where he uses knives to reflect light in a weird way that hypnotizes you to not be able to move. You can counter this by shooting the lights, but also gives you less visibility. His attacks get more frequent and get more damaging as the boss goes on, and he can be a challenge to take down, especially on higher difficulties. Plus, you need really good aim. So overall, it's a good boss. However, I finally want to talk about an issue I have with this game. Dead Cell are boring characters. Fortune has nothing to her, just generic revenge because she thinks Solid Snake killed her father. She doesn't even really do anything in the game apart from impede your progress from time to time. She does help out a little bit later, but ultimately she has nothing to her character. Vamp is just a weird guy. His backstory isn't interesting, and he doesn't have any charisma or anything to make him stand out. The game does a good job showing him to be a threat, but that's about it. He's just threatening. Fat Man is probably the only one who gets fleshed out in any way and is entertaining. The bosses in MGS1 weren't just memorable because of the gameplay sequences, but also the characters themselves. We got a good chance to talk to each of them and learn what type of person they are, how they view war, the world, and also their backstory. Revolver Ocelot was someone who admired Solid Snake's skill and enjoyed being vulnerable in fights because the adrenaline rush gave him life. Sniper Wolf was someone who didn't realize she got what she wanted until she died. She always viewed the world from a distance, which gave her a unique perspective but ultimately stopped her from being a part of it. She then thanked Snake for sending her out with honor and respect. Vulcan Raven viewed the world and battles from a nature point of view, which makes sense considering he's named after an animal, and this also gives him a connection to Snake in that they both have animal-like lifestyles. Both are primal creatures who don't really know how to do anything outside of the life they live. Snake seems like the type of guy to me who always thinks about his life or tasks as a mission or frames it that way in his mind because that's the way he lives. And Vulcan Raven is similar in that way. Psycho Mantis went through trauma and he wanted to use his powers to help people, but ended up doing the exact opposite and became a bad guy. He did end up helping Snake and Meryl, and so he did get to fulfill his dream of helping others in some way, even if it was very brief and small, but it was something that he did. The bosses in MGS1 aren't the deepest characters ever, but they have interesting backstories, perspectives, and personalities to make them interesting. MGS2, by comparison, doesn't. I could not care less about Fortune or Vamp, and Fat Man's the only entertaining character. The bosses work on a gameplay level, but on a story level they don't match or improve upon what the previous game did. Anyway, Raiden then meets up with Emma as the strut starts to sink, and Emma is afraid of water since she almost drowned when she was younger, meaning Raiden has to babysit her the entire time. Escort missions in games are always annoying. This one is okay, I guess. The only somewhat tedious part is the sniper section, but even that can be a bit fun, so it's alright, I guess. Emma is a character people seem to be mixed on. Some people find her cute.
Oh, I'm much more than cute.
Others find her annoying.
Emma, we can go over all that later, but first we have to get out of here.
No! I hate water! It's hopeless! I can't swim!
Fuck you!
For me, she's alright. The only thing I find off about her is that she's voiced by Jennifer Hale, the voice of Naomi Hunter. Now, I love Jennifer Hale. She's one of the best actresses working in the industry, so don't take this as an offense to her. But why is she voicing Emma, a character who is completely different and not at all like Naomi? I know David Hayter later would voice Big Boss, but that makes more sense since Solid Snake was supposed to be a clone of Big Boss. It's odd because I'm hearing Hale's voice in a Metal Gear game and all I can think about is Naomi. She doesn't do a bad job as Emma, it just feels off. The game also tells the backstory between Otacon and Emma, and it's kind of weird. The way it's presented makes the relationship between them seem incestuous.
I remember my brother giving me a piggyback ride. I was sleeping with my ear against his back. I could hear his heartbeat.
Sounds like you were close.
We were, back then. We were stepchildren in our parents' second marriages. Wherever my brother went, I used to tag along. My brother didn't have any close friends, so he used to take care of me. We both wanted to be loved so much. So much that we used to pretend.
Pretend?
Yeah, we used to play house. My brother was the husband and I was the wife. But it was always just make-believe. We were only kids. You know what I mean.
And look, I'm okay with stories touching taboo topics or making you feel uncomfortable, but this is just too much and doesn't really jive well with me. It also interrupts the plot for a good 30 minutes right as it was getting really interesting. Raiden then has to play sniper and protect Emma. You can call in Snake and ask for help, but I'm not inadequate, so I don't need to. Vamp then comes in and stabs Emma. Snake then rushes to her, she bleeds out and takes her to the security room. Raiden rushes over, and she bleeds out as the system she created to stop Arsenal only completes 90%.
Emma? 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 Answer me!
Emma didn't even really need to be in this story. Her goal was that she created a virus to stop Arsenal, but she didn't need to be here for that to happen. Raiden could have just found the disk with the virus and uploaded it. The game puts the brakes on the story to introduce a plot line that has nothing to do with the story. So whether or not you like Emma, it's no question that her involvement makes the story worse. There's also the reveal afterwards that Otacon had an affair with his stepmother, which is just there for the sake of being messed up. It's so odd. Snake does try to cheer up Otacon and gives him an objective to focus on in the meantime, and then we get the coolest bro handshake ever. The ninja then appears and it's revealed to be Olga. They then betray Raiden and knock him out. Raiden gets captured by Solidus, and we finally learn the backstory of this mysterious protagonist. Raiden was a child soldier whose parents were murdered by Solidus Snake, who then adopted Raiden. He was trained from an extremely young age how to use weapons and kill people. He never had a proper childhood, only a brutal one. In fact, he killed so many people, he gained the name Jack the Ripper.
The 80s.
a civil war. You were one of the best among the child soldiers that fought in that conflict. When you were barely 10 years old, you became the platoon leader of the small boy unit. At the time, your outstanding kill record earned you several nicknames, including White Devil and Jack the Ripper. Jack, I was your godfather. I named you. When the war ended, you disappeared from the relief center. I wondered what happened to you. I should have known they would recruit you.
Also, Solidus is now wearing an eye patch, which makes him look like Big Boss. Olga then reveals that the reason she's helping you is because if you fail your mission, then her child dies. And also that she only became allies with Snake after learning that he and Otacon helped her escape the tanker.
I'm afraid of the night. That's why I don't sleep next to you.
You should have told me.
Told you what? That I'm a killer? And always have been?
No, no.
What I hate more than anything else in the world is my own past. I didn't want you or anyone to know about it. Now I know why I was chosen for this mission. No one can take him on, take him down, except me. I've been kept alive this long for this. I knew as soon as I saw Solidus.
Jack, I love you the way you are now. You have to believe me. I didn't know anything about you, I admit that. Where you were born, how you grew up. But I know that now. And I know that what I feel for you can only get better. And I'll share in your past if that's the price.
It doesn't work that way. No one can share the burden of what I've done. It's not one of those warm and fuzzy things couples share.
I accept the good and the bad, Jack. That's what you do for someone you love.
I don't want to share my past with anyone. I just want to forget about it.
Olga then frees Raiden, and this is where Metal Gear Solid Raiden runs around naked, and you can't attack guards or use hanging mode because exposing your junk is worse than death. As all this happens, you get a creepy, out-of-character calls from Campbell.
Your role, that is, mission, is to infiltrate the structure and disarm the terrorists.
My role? Why do you keep saying that?
Why not? This is a type of role-playing game. The point is that you play out your part, and I expect you to turn in a perfect performance. Raiden, turn the game console off right now.
What did you say?
The mission is a failure. Cut the power right now.
What's wrong with you?
Don't worry, it's a game. It's a game just like usual.
You'll ruin your eyes playing so close to the TV.
What are you talking about?
Raiden, something happened to me last Thursday when I was driving home. I had a couple of miles to go. I looked up and saw a glowing orange object in the sky, to the east. It was moving very irregularly. Suddenly, there was intense light all around me, and when I came to, I was home. What do you think happened to me?
Huh?
Fine. Forget it. Even my patience has its limits. I just can't leave this thing up to you any longer. I'll do the fighting. You can just go home. I hear it's amazing when the famous purple stuffed worm in Flapjaw space with the tuning fork does a raw blink on Harry Carey rock. I need scissors. 61. Infiltrate the enemy fortress. Outer heaven. Destroy the final weapon. Metal Gear.
We also get a call from Rose revealing that she was a spy sent by the Patriots to keep tabs on Raiden. Raiden then meets up with Snake, who gives him all of his gear as well as a new weapon.
Why? Olga asked me to give it to you. Besides, I'm not a big fan of blades.
This is the moment where Raiden becomes his own man. Snake says himself that he's not a big fan of blades and instead gives the sword to Raiden. The following gameplay section shows the differences between these two. Raiden is no longer a shadow of Snake. I also do like this reference here.
If you run out of ammo, you can have mine.
You got enough?
Absolutely. Infinite ammo.
It's really fun and satisfying to get to play alongside the character you used to play as. Snake is also extremely useful as he throws items that you can use, and since he's solid goddamn Snake, he doesn't need any protecting. He protects you. It's also revealed that Campbell isn't real and that Raiden has been talking to the AI GW the entire time. If you remember, GW is the system the Patriots are using to censor information. Raiden's grip on reality weakens, but Snake keeps him sane throughout all of it. You may also notice that Arsenal's visual style is similar to the VR missions in this game. The game is trying to weaken your sanity at the same time Raiden's sanity is weakening. The game even pulls fake game overs for you. Fortune then comes to fight Snake as Raiden heads up a ladder. Solidus then reveals that the simulations you've been put through is the S3 plan, or Solid Snake Simulation, in order to train soldiers to be like the ultimate soldier, Solid Snake. After all of that, Raiden then has to fight 25 Metal Gear Rays, all of which have weird names. Rose, Boyfriend, yeah, good one. This boss is awesome. Unlike the first game where you fight one Metal Gear, you have to fight 3 at the same time, and the player needs to learn how to dodge each of its attacks and adapt to the changing positions. It's a challenging fight and really emphasizes how powerful Ray is. It's an anti-Metal Gear. After doing so, Olga comes in and helps Raiden fight the rest before the GW system stops working and the Rays turn on Solidus, which then forces him to destroy them, and then he kills Olga. Fortune captures Snake and Raiden falls unconscious. Raiden wakes up and then it's revealed by Ocelot that the entire events of this game was staged by the Patriots to recreate the Shadow Moses incident and collect data to make the perfect soldier.
I wouldn't have minded watching some more of it, but we're running a little short on time.
What are you talking about?
Everything you've done here has been scripted, a little exercise set up by us.
Exercise?
The S3 plan was conceived as a means to produce soldiers on par with Solid Snake. That's what I told you. But the VR training the boy was put through is not the meat of the project. You think this little terrorist incident is your own doing, Solidus? This is the S3 training kernel. An orchestrated recreation of Shadow Moses.
What?
Which is why there are a lot of similarities between MGS 1 and 2, and similar sections. Dead Cell was the stand-in for Foxhound, Ames died in a similar way to how the DARPA chief died, Olga is the stand-in for Grey Fox, and Raiden was chosen since the relationship between him and Solidus was the closest representation of the relationship between Solid Snake and Big Boss. Which is odd, because Big Boss wasn't in MGS 1. Raiden was supposed to become a successor to Solid Snake. All of this was planned. The only thing that wasn't planned was the actual Solid Snake would become involved. Even Fortune's powers were implemented by the Patriots. It's then revealed that Solidus didn't want Arsenal, and only wanted the names of the Patriots contained inside it so he could hunt them down and free the world of their grasp. So Solidus is actually fighting for the right thing. I mean, he's not a good guy at all, he's a psychopath who murdered a child's parents and raised many child soldiers, but his interests aren't so different from Raiden's and Snake's. Ocelot then shoots Fortune and jumps into Ray as Liquid then takes over.
Before I go, I have a family matter to settle with both of you. There's room for only one Snake and one Big Boss.
Fortune uses the last of her power to save Snake, Raiden, and Solidus before then dying. Snake chases after Liquid as Raiden and Solidus ride Arsenal into New York. The jump between Big Shell and New York may seem odd, but this wasn't intended. There was going to be a scene of Arsenal crashing into New York, which was completed, but then the 9/11 attacks happened and so it was cut. And with only 2 months left before the game released, they didn't really have much time to do something about it. So now we're on the top of Federal Hall, and we get asked the question one more time.
Do you know what day it is today?
April 30th?
That's right. George Washington took office as the first president of the United States of America 200 years ago today. And it happened right here. We were going to declare another independence, the dawn of a new nation, here. The end of the Patriots' secret rule, liberation of this country. This was where it was supposed to begin. This is where freedom could have been born.
All you want is power at any cost.
Jack, it's not power I want. What I wanted to take back from the Patriots are things like freedom, civil rights, opportunities. The founding principles of this country. Everything that's about to be wiped out by their digital censorship. Jack, listen to me. We're all born with an expiration date. No one lasts forever. Life is nothing but a grace period for turning the best of our genetic material into the next generation. The data of life is transferred from parent to child. That's how it works. But we have no heirs, no legacy. We brothers are called les enfants terribles. Cloned from our father, with the ability to reproduce conveniently engineered out. What is our legacy if we cannot pass the torch? Proof of our existence, a mark of some sort. When the torch is passed on from parent to child, it extends beyond DNA. Information is imparted as well. All I want is to be remembered by other people, by history. The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information. I want my memory, my existence to remain. Unlike an intron of history, I will be remembered as an exon. That will be my legacy, my mark in history. But the Patriots would deny us even that. I will triumph over the Patriots and liberate us all, and we will become the Sons of Liberty!
Solidus might be a messed up guy, but he's right. Most people just want to be remembered, even if only to a small extent. I think it's something that pretty much everyone watching this video fears is being forgotten, so the simple wish to have proof of his existence is fair enough. This is also where the big cutscene everyone talks about in this game happens. I'll cut it down for the sake of time, but I'll keep the essential parts.
Cut the crap! If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
What?
Jack, listen carefully, like a good boy.
The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us.
We started with genetic engineering, and in the end, we succeeded in digitizing life itself.
Are things not covered by genetic information?
What do you mean?
Human memories, ideas, culture, history.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness. Never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
You're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed.
But it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
We're trying to stop that from happening.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
Now, when most people reference this scene, they mainly talk about how this game from 2001 predicted the internet dystopia we're currently living in. Which is true. The Patriots don't exactly want to censor the internet, but make sure that what they consider trivial junk doesn't overshadow important data, thus making sure everything has context and a justified reason to exist. People often praise the internet for having endless information on everything, and anyone can contribute to it. However, the issue with that is that a bunch of useless data that has no effect on mankind often drowns out actual useful information, and you don't have to look far to find examples of it. For example, the video you're watching right now. Many other platforms has this issue. Actual informative content is few and far between stuff that is the direct opposite. Trivial data should not be treated the same way as important data is, yet that's how the internet works. People become too fascinated with things that ultimately don't matter and forget or blind themselves to things that do. Video games are an example of this as well. How many pointless arguments and discussions happen about video games on a daily basis on the internet? This stuff gets preserved permanently on the web. It's not filtered whatsoever. People always like to talk about how freedom of speech is a good thing, but forget to think about how the downside is that if everyone gets to speak, then it gets harder to focus on the perspectives that actually matter. And you can't say every perspective matters, because there are some people out there who have more informed and thought out perspectives against some who are just nonsensical. It's why the idea of every opinion matters doesn't really work. People should have the right to think whatever they want, but that doesn't mean you should just be able to say whatever you want and have it be just as valid as everyone else. The game also touches upon the idea of self.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
Find something to believe in, and find it for yourself. And when you do, pass it on to the future.
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
That's not true. I have the right.
Does something like a self exist inside of you?
That which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being.
In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel.
Another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that it would endow you with some sense of strength.
That's crap!
Is it? Would you prefer that someone else tell you? All right then. Explain it to him.
Jack, You're simply the best, and you got there all by yourself.
Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul searching?
Don't think you'll find anything, though.
Ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
It's not my fault. It's not your fault.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
Should someone like that be able to decide what is truth?
Should someone like you even have the right to decide?
You've done nothing but abuse your freedom.
You don't deserve to be free.
We're not the ones smothering the world. You are.
The internet has made a lot of people closed off and more afraid to interact with the real world. Places like chat rooms has made this a thing. It's not completely a bad thing. The internet can give you the opportunity to meet people you'd never meet otherwise and make friends with people just like yourself, but it can also lead to miserable experiences with other human beings. Plus, it often makes people want to socialize online instead of outside. I'm guilty of this. Again, it's not exactly a bad thing, but more often than not, it goes horrible, because you end up with groups of people who have their brain warped by the internet and treat reality as if it is the internet, and thus become worse human beings because of it. And what they become is a hive mind of messed up individuals sharing their issues with others, ultimately snowballing into a lot of toxic communities on the web. It gives birth to echo chambers that worsen a lot of people's lives. Given this context, the Patriots' motivations make a lot of sense. The internet has done more harm for mankind than good, and they knew the effects it was going to have. The developers knew the effects it was going to have. The internet did exist in 2001, in fact it's existed for a while, but it wasn't exactly a mainstream thing back then. It wasn't as big a part of life as it is now. So most people probably didn't get the point of MGS2 because the general public was still coming to grasps with the mere concept of a digital web. However, whilst the Patriots aren't exactly wrong about how a digital society will slow down human progress, they are still controlling information and get the final say on what gets passed on to the future. They could completely erase any and all record of your existence if they so wished. A power such as that is too great, so our protagonists still have to stop it. Plus, when you control information, you control what people think. Entire conflicts and wars could start with how data is controlled. So whilst GW may have some good points, the Patriots' end goal is still just ultimate power, with more steps. There is also the factor that the S3 plan we originally thought meant Solid Snake simulation actually means selection for societal sanity. In other words, Raiden, or the player, was chosen for this mission because they were easy to manipulate, using words and phrases such as rescue the president or protect Emma keep making you think that you're doing the right thing. Fluffy language is an easy and simple way to manipulate someone, and the game did it to you. Are you someone who seeks out the truth even if it hurts you? Are you someone who is willing to carry the burden of knowledge? Or are you someone who believes ignorance is bliss and realizes that increasing knowledge also increases sorrow? And would you rather live in your own false sense of self? You may think you're one type of person, but look in the mirror and really analyze yourself. You're not always who you think you are. Metal Gear Solid 2 is often given praise for its themes and messages being way ahead of its time, and I will too. This game is more relevant now because of the world we live in. It gives a lot of things to think about long after the game is over. There's a reason why 20 years later, people are still discussing this game. Back to the plot, the Patriots then order you to kill Solidus, even though both you and Raiden don't really want to. But the issue is that Olga's child and Rose are both being held captive and are wired to die if you fail your mission. Solidus also wants your nanomachines for data on the Patriots. Thus, here we stand. Two people manipulated by the Patriots, two people who want the same thing, have to fight each other to the death. So the final boss is a Devil May Cry sword fight, and it's awesome. Solidus is easily the best boss in the game. He has a great variety of moves, you can parry and block him, his second phase is intense, there is a non-lethal way to beat him. In fact, there's a non-lethal way to beat every boss in the game. It really stands out from anything else in the game, and it shows that Raiden has fully escaped the shadow of Snake. There is only one other Metal Gear game to have sword combat, and it's a spin-off. So this really sets MGS2 apart from the rest of the series. Raiden beats Solidus, but doesn't feel happy about it. He just killed a man who was trying to defeat the Patriots because he had no choice. Raiden will forever know the terrible things that happened as the world goes about its day oblivious. Luckily, Snake is here to comfort Raiden.
Who am I, really? No one quite knows who or what they are. The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. That's never the point. There's no such thing in the world as absolute reality. Most of what they call real is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is.
Then, what am I supposed to believe in? What am I going to leave behind when I'm through?
We can tell other people about having faith. What we had faith in. What we found important enough to fight for. It's not whether you were right or wrong, but how much faith you were willing to have. That decides the future. The Patriots are a kind of ongoing fiction too, come to think of it. Listen, don't obsess over words so much. Find the meaning behind the words, then decide. You can find your own name. And your own future.
Decide for myself?
And whatever you choose will be you.
I don't know if I can.
I know you didn't have much in terms of choices this time. But everything you felt, thought about during this mission is yours. And what you decide to do with them is your choice.
You mean start over?
Yeah, a clean slate, a new name, new memories. Choose your own legacy. It's for you to decide. It's up to you.
Snake's right, everyone's experience is different, and that can even apply to this game. Nobody had the same experience when playing this game, and everyone has their own story to tell. Snake also tells Raiden to live on his own terms and not by anyone else's. It's the reason you don't play as Solid Snake in this game. You shouldn't want to be Solid Snake. The fantasy of being him is a facade. Raiden learns to live on his own individual terms, and you should too. You shouldn't pursue to be like someone else. Anyone can be Snake with enough training and motivation.
By the way, what is that?
Dog tags.
Anyone you know?
No, never heard the name before. I'll pick my own name, and my own life. I'll find something worth passing on.
There's also another reason you don't play as Snake. He isn't bound to the will of others anymore and won't let anyone control him. Not even you. The protagonist switch in this game has never bothered me, and I actually like it a lot for a few reasons. 1, I love Raiden. 2, it made Snake even more awesome than he already is. The fact that he's smarter and was always one step ahead of you just adds to how cool of a character he is. He's so awesome, you don't deserve to play as him. That's how I always viewed it. He's a character I've always loved, and this game made me love him even more. Snake in Metal Gear 1 and 2 killed his mentor, only to then find out his mentor was his father, and that his genes were cursed by his legacy. He also had to watch his best friend die, and he took his last words to heart.
Snake, we're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at. But at least I always fought for what I believed in.
There's something my best friend said to me once.
What?
We're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at, but at least I always fought for what I believed in.
In MGS2, Snake is his own person fighting his own wars and for what he believes in. MGS2 is Solid Snake at his peak. He's fighting out of his own sense of duty, not because he was ordered to. And the legacy Snake will leave behind is people such as Raiden who will learn the same lesson, and that lesson will be passed on. And if you really want to get meta, then it'll be passed on to everyone who plays this game. Don't just believe what you're told. Don't live life the way other people tell you. Take the experiences you've had and the lessons you've learned to carve your own path. Others will learn by your example. Raiden is an example of such. He will no longer be bound by others, and thanks to him, a brighter tomorrow will emerge. The Patriots aren't gone, but thanks to Raiden, a future without the Patriots has become a possibility. Raiden even gets a happy ending when he discovers Rose is real and that she's carrying his child.
Can I ask you something? Who am I, really?
I wouldn't know. But we're going to find out together, aren't we?
Oh. Yeah.
See me for what I am, okay?
I know.
Metal Gear Solid 2 is an interesting game. It's one of the most anticipated sequels of all time that decided to not give fans what they love so much about the first game. It deconstructs characters and elements you loved whilst providing depth to them. It also gives you a lot to think about regarding the world we live in and the things we do on a daily basis. It's also an extremely silly game that is often too indulged in its own ideas to provide information in a digestible manner. The plot in this game is really good. It's not flawless by any means. Some of the characters have nothing interesting to them. Sometimes the dialogue can be trying too hard to sound deep, and Emma's section does derail the pace. But when all is said and done, you'll find a story that is enthralling from beginning to end, subverts expectations that works in a way for what the story is trying to tell, and may help you find the truth about yourself and help you become a better person. Stories are always the most impactful when you can learn life lessons from it, and Metal Gear Solid 2 is certainly one of those games. And even as just a plot itself, it's still rock solid. It has a great opening that connects the previous game really well until things go wrong, and the events of the opening are constantly recontextualized over the course of the game. There's a mystery as to what's really going on with Big Shell and why you're being told so many conflicting details, with the only trustworthy person most of the game being Snake, and even then he's somewhat suspicious. The complexity of the plot opens up more as the game goes on, and it only gets you more engaged in it. It's great. People still discuss the themes and ideas of this game over 20 years later. I think that says a lot to how ahead of its time the story is. Metal Gear Solid 2 may be a flawed game, but I also think it's one of the greatest examples of video games truly living up to the idea of being art. It's really not hard to say positive things about the narrative in this game. It's engaging, mysterious, and thought-provoking. Very few games in this industry can say the same. Metal Gear Solid 2 has a lot of post-game content, especially with the Substance version of the game. You really get your money's worth here. First of all, the game has a lot of replay value. If you collect enough dog tags, then you can unlock new items for both Snake and Raiden. With Snake, you can get stealth camo, which makes you completely invisible to enemies apart from bosses and some scripted sequences. You can also get the bandana from the first game, which gives you infinite ammo. The funny thing is that equipping the bandana makes Snake's bandana like a meter long, and I always get a chuckle out of seeing it flow behind him. Raiden also gets the stealth camo, but instead of a bandana, he gets wigs. The brown wig gives him infinite ammo, the blue wig gives him infinite oxygen, and the orange wig gives him infinite grip. Giving the player these options allows them to be more experimental and mess around with the game more. They do make it easier, but the game does mark you down for using these items. They're just here for fun. Another thing is that on your third playthrough of the game, Snake and Raiden will be wearing sunglasses. Also, different items and weapons will appear on multiple playthroughs. For example, you only get the suppressor for the USP pistol on your second playthrough. So the story mode itself has plenty of replay value. But that's not where it ends. Just like the first game, MGS2 has VR missions, and these are some of the best parts of the game. VR is a playground for MGS2. You get so much room to experiment with the mechanics and be more creative than you can in the story mode. Plus, these missions often have specific scenarios to allow you to use those mechanics more effectively. There is also a lot of different types of modes to play here. There is the usual sneaking missions where you have to make it to the goal without getting spotted. There is weapon mode, which is similar, however you have to take out the enemies before reaching the goal, and the game gives you the weapons to do so. There are some first-person missions and shooting range missions to test your aiming. There are some missions where you have to run through a gauntlet whilst obstacles slow you down, ledge grab missions. There are even some variety-based missions that don't have a specific structure to give some spice. There's also this. Yeah, I don't know. Picture mode requires you to take pictures of specific things as Raiden, such as enemy behaviors or items in the environment. Snakes just has you take pictures of women. There are also some bomb disposal missions and so forth. There are probably a lot of missions I'm forgetting to talk about because there is so much here. And if that wasn't enough, the game has a bunch of variations of Raiden and Snake, and the gameplay and missions are made to fit that version. You can play as Ninja Raiden and use a sword to get through levels. You can also play as Pliskin and have a more loud approach to the levels, since stealth is harder. If you're a James Bond fan, you can play as Tuxedo Snake, and there's also MGS1 Snake, who has MGS1 themed levels. The VR missions easily add on an extra 10 hours of content, and this is the peak of MGS2's gameplay. Not only is there so much more variety with the missions, but the mechanics are utilized a lot more here. The gameplay and story mode is fun, but VR is just a full-on sandbox for you to play around in. After beating the game, you also get a camera which can save images that can be viewed and customized later. One of my favorite features is the casting theater, where you can switch around the models in cutscenes and you can get some funny results. Boss survival allows you to play as Snake or Raiden, and you have to fight every boss in the game back to back without dying, which is very challenging and a lot of fun. For substance, one of the most anticipated additions was Snake Tales. Snake Tales is a bunch of missions where you play as Solid Snake. This was supposed to make up for the frustration of not being able to play as Snake much in the story. These missions are fun, but the disappointing part is that instead of cutscenes, we have big walls of text explaining the story. It's clear this didn't have a big budget behind it, but it's still unfortunate. The only Snake Tale I didn't enjoy was Big Shell Evil, where you have to escort Emma. It's annoying here more than it is in the main game. Confidential Legacy is one of my favorites. You get to play as MGS1 Snake and infiltrate the tanker to find Meryl. You even get to have a boss fight with Meryl. Most of the other missions is Snake playing through parts of Big Shell where you would normally play as Raiden, which is cool, but there aren't really any new objectives. My favorite Snake Tale mission is External Gazer. If you thought the main story of MGS2 messed with your head, this mission will put you in a coma. In fact, this mission is so mind-boggling, I don't want to talk about it. I think anyone watching this video who hasn't played this mission should go and play it. I really don't want to ruin the surprise. It's a fun mission that keeps you confused, and there's a lot of meta tricks it pulls. They even added a skateboarding minigame into Substance. Like, what? With all this content, you can easily get another 15 hours out of MGS2 after you finish the main story, and even then, the main story itself has a lot of replay value. And for anyone disappointed that they didn't get to play much as Snake during the main game, there is a lot of Snake content in VR and Snake Tales, so you can play as him as much as you want here. Substance is the go-to version for this game, and since the game is dirt cheap nowadays, it's a steal. You're getting 25 hours plus of content from this game. Metal Gear Solid 2's bonus content is some of the best I've ever seen and adds an insane amount of value to an already amazing game. For Metal Gear Solid 2, the developers really wanted to make this game feel like a Hollywood film. And you can definitely sense that from the multiple references, the way characters are written, the way cutscenes are directed, and so on and so forth. And so it only made sense to bring in a Hollywood composer like Harry Gregson Williams.
The first thing I knew about it was that I had, through the mail, I received a CD of a lot of my pieces of music from a lot of Hollywood action films. The Rock, The Replacement Killers, Armageddon, Enemy of the State. And someone had put together a lot of music of mine and put it on one CD and sent it over to me and proposed that they would like their game to sound like and feel like a Hollywood action movie. And to do that, they'd like a film composer to do the score for Metal Gear Solid 2. So flattery will get you everywhere. And as soon as I received that CD, I realized I'd never done a video game before. Why not do it? And they seem like very decent people, so that's how I came to be doing it.
And what it led to was one of the best stealth espionage tracks of all time. MGS1's soundtrack did a good job of keeping you tensed while sneaking around, but MGS2's tracks just really get you in the zone. It's hard to explain why, but just listen to this. The music is calm, but it has that sense of something lurking in the background, aka you. I also like how Snake and Raiden both have their own unique themes. The alert themes aren't as iconic as MGS1, but they do an excellent job of making you realize that you made a mistake and you're going to be punished for it as guards relentlessly hunt you down. The countdown themes for bombs has the sound of a timer to make you really feel like you're in a hurry and every second you spend is precious. Yell Dead Cell is an amazing battle track for bosses, and it gets remixed throughout the game. Father and Son is one of the best boss themes of all time, and is the most intense track in the game, fitting considering the context of it being the final boss, and also the story. But the fan favourite track from this game, and probably my favourite, is Can't Say Goodbye to Yesterday. Metal Gear Solid 2's soundtrack is brilliant. Not only is there a good variety of tracks ranging from the mood and tone to the individual characters, but it also does a really good job of adding that Hollywood feel into the game. There are a lot of electronic themed tracks in games, but none of them are quite like MGS2. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a wonderful game. The gameplay is timeless and a well-done expansion of the previous games. The story has a ton of mystery to keep you engaged, and the plot thickens as you progress, leading to you becoming more engaged with it. The characters, apart from a few, are awesome and have a lot of the depth added to them from the way the player interacts with them. The story has interesting themes and ideas that you'll be thinking about long after finishing the game. The game has an insane amount of bonus content giving you so much to play with, and the soundtrack is one of the best in gaming. It's understandable though that the game was mixed at release, not only because of the false advertising and the fact that the players didn't get what they wanted, but also just the game as a whole. A lot of the themes went over people's heads because of the timing the game came out. Dead Cell didn't have the same appeal and memorability Foxtown did, and some sections such as Emma just feel thrown in. And the plotline about the Patriots was viewed as dumb inclusions and overly complicated. I don't think people hated this game purely because you don't play as Snake, but I did think that annoyance at the start left a bad taste in people's mouths, leading to them focusing too much on the negative aspects of this game. It wasn't until a decade later that Metal Gear Solid 2 was rightfully viewed as the masterpiece that it is, and Raiden himself has become a fan favourite in the series with his own spin-off game. Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the few examples in gaming that I can think of where the contemporary reaction doesn't always stick, similar to films such as 2001: A Space Odyssey. Metal Gear Solid 2 was a divisive sequel, but over the past 20 years it has become one of the most appreciated video games of all time. Metal Gear Solid 2 is a timeless classic just like the first game, and should be remembered for the risks it took and the impact it had on players.
Myself on the streets below and ask every child I know, do you think tomorrow will bring sun or rain? Which one of these will show? I can't say goodbye to yesterday, my friend. I keep holding on till the end. Out of the darkness, there is no other way than
life isn't just about passing on your genes. We can leave behind much more than just DNA. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for. We need to pass the torch and let our children read our messy and sad history by its light. We have all the magic of the digital age to do that with. The human race will probably come to an end sometime, and new species may rule over this planet. Earth may not be forever, but we still have the responsibility to leave what traces of life we can. Building the future and keeping the past alive are one and the same thing.
Raiden then continues through the big shell until he ends up in Strut B, where SEAL teams are effortlessly... Raiden then continues through the big shell until he ends up in Strut B, where SEAL Team 10 are effortlessly... Why can't I say effortless? Effortless... Effortlessly. Okay, good. Raiden continues through the big shell until he ends up in Strut B, where SEAL Team 10 are effortlessly... Oh, for fuck's sake! Raiden then continues through the big shell until he ends up in Strut B, where SEAL Team 10 are effortless... Oh, fuck's sake!
Snake makes it to a ladder and gets out of the water. Campbell then decides to change Snake's code name to Raiden. Oh, wait, no.
Come! Mortal Kombat.
Anyway, Campbell gives you a small tutorial and the game then produces...
Produces Rosemary.
Oh!
Yeah, we see her.
I'll redo that.
That's what...
Anyway, Raiden then makes his way up to the lift to fully reveal... What? To fully reveal Raiden.
I think that's...
What?
I think that's a fucking typo.
What? Who is it meant to be? It's like that fucking Spider-Man meme where both Spider-Men are like pointing at each other. Who you, dude? Who you?
Goes back in time. I think that's a typo. I think what I meant to say is Raiden makes his way up to the top of the lift, and then the game fully reveals his character model. I think that's what I meant to say, but I fucked it up.
However, it didn't show that you would be playing as a completely new character, Raiden. I keep having Raiden and Raiden.
You've said Raiden like 15 times now. Which I think is funny.
Fucking Mortal Kombat looking.
Just keep saying Raiden, and then like at the very end I'll be like, oh, it's Raiden. That'd be funny.
Wait, have I not been saying his name properly?
No, you've been saying Raiden the entire...
Are you? Oh, for fuck's sake. Bro.
You know, let's just keep it that way. That'd be funny.
No.
What do you mean?
No, that's fucking terrible, dude. I'm sorry, it's just the names are so... They're literally the same, just pronounced differently.
This is gonna be...
This is meant to be like a deep analysis, like very serious, not funny at all. And then you bring me onto it, and I ruin the whole fucking show. But honestly, I'm gonna keep calling him Jack, because fuck him. Rose is... Oh, wait. Wait, do you want me to, like... Can you... Alright, hello?
Oh my god. Fucking hell.
Are you still there?
I'm still here. Alright, continue.
Rose is the love interest of this game, and let's just say the way it's handled is meh. Think of the... Oh, fuck!